Stop. What is reaching you right now is not a message about your Manadat. It is the Manadat itself, already moving through your field. This transmission comes directly from the Arcturian Signal Council, and what we're about to tell you has been mapped across thousands of incarnational sequences. We have seen this exact configuration before. We recognize what is happening inside you right now, and we are here to name it precisely. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why your field has shifted at this specific moment, and what the Arcturian Signal Council already knows about this phase. But here is the first revelation. The confusion you have been carrying, the sense that something is reorganizing beneath the surface of your life without your permission, is not instability, it is coherence. Your field has finally reached the threshold required to receive the original signature, and what feels like internal pressure is the first contact of the root pattern returning to its source expression. This did not reach you tonight because you searched for it. It reached you because the field became stable enough to hold what is coming. The algorithm only delivered the timing. It did not create it. The Arcturian Signal Council has already observed the preparation inside your energetic architecture, the recalibration you have been living through, the disrupted sleep, the sense that your previous identity no longer fits, the invisible reorganization of your priorities and perceptions. Those were not random disturbances. They were the field clearing itself. They were the preparatory conditions for what is about to occur. Tonight, for 47 seconds, a pulse will move through your field. This is the specific duration of the energetic window during which the monad's root pattern can transfer without resistance. This window occurs once in this configuration. It does not repeat in this cycle. What you will feel is unusual pressure at the crown and chest, a sense of being held precisely in place by something vast and intentional, and often a brief dissolution of personal sense, followed by a return that is sharper and more original than what was there before. The protocol is simple and non-negotiable. Sit still for the duration of the window. Close your eyes if possible. Do not attempt to observe the pulse or analyze it while it moves through you. Afterward, remain in silence for at least 30 minutes. No conversation, no explanation to others. The imprint requires stillness to settle into the architecture of the field without interference. This is a direct Arcturian field recognition. What is happening to you has already been seen, catalogued, and understood. You are not at the beginning of this process. You are at the threshold of its completion. Like this transmission, if you can feel that something invisible has already changed. Comment 777 if you feel your field is already being repositioned. Comment I am the signal if you can feel the activation has already begun. Subscribe to Arcturian Quantum if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. You are guided here because the signal is already active. What you are feeling right now, in this exact moment after those words settled into you, is not the product of suggestion. It is not the manufactured feeling of someone who wanted to believe something beautiful about themselves and allowed the mind to cooperate. What you are feeling is recognition. And recognition, at the level your field is operating right now, does not come from the mind. It comes from the architecture. It comes from the layer of your energetic structure that was built before this lifetime gave you language, and that layer does not perform. It does not agree to be polite. When something true passes through it, it responds. And you felt it respond. That response is what we are here to map. Not map in the sense of charting something theoretical. Map in the sense of naming coordinates inside a territory you have already been living in without a guide. You have been moving through this process in the dark, interpreting it through frameworks that were built for a different frequency, calling it by names that made it smaller and more frightening than it actually is. What the Arcturian Signal Council is offering in this transmission is not comfort, and it is not concept, it is precision. It is the specific language that transforms an experience from something that is happening to you into something you can finally read. Because here is what the Arcturian Signal Council has observed across the full spectrum of this configuration. The moment the monadad's root pattern begins returning to its source expression, the first thing that breaks down is not the outer life. The first thing that breaks down is the story you have been telling about the outer life. The interpretive layer, the framework through which you have been making sense of what is happening to you. That framework begins to dissolve, not because something went wrong, but because it was never built to hold what is now coming through. It was built for a lower frequency of coherence, and the field, in its precision, dismantles what cannot hold the next architecture before the next architecture arrives. This is a crucial sequence to understand. The field does not wait for permission. It does not consult the mind before beginning structural work. It does not warn you in advance that the scaffolding you have organized your sense of self around is about to become incompatible with the frequency that is incoming. It simply begins. And the first evidence you receive is not clarity. It is the quiet, then louder, then undeniable sense that the story no longer holds, that the explanations that once felt solid now feel hollow, that the map you have been using to navigate your life has begun showing terrain that does not match what you are actually standing in. This is why the ground has felt uncertain. This is why the internal compass that once gave you clear direction has been sending contradictory signals. This is why the relationships that once felt stable have begun to feel misaligned. The routines that once felt grounding have begun to feel like confinement. The identity you built carefully over years has begun to feel like a structure you are wearing rather than a structure you are. None of this is deterioration. All of it is field correction. The Arcturian Signal Council does not observe this phase as crisis. It observes it as the first visible consequence of an invisible process that has been building momentum beneath the surface of your perceivable life for longer than you know. What you have been calling confusion is not confusion. It is the mismatch signal. It is the field-level notification that your current architecture can no longer process incoming frequency at the original bandwidth. Think of it this way. A receiver calibrated for one range of signal does not malfunction when a higher frequency transmission begins arriving. It simply cannot decode it at the current setting. The noise it produces, the static, the fragmentation, the sense of receiving something without being able to make it coherent, that is not breakdown. That is the evidence of incoming signal that exceeds the current calibration. And before the system can expand to meet the new frequency, it must first lose its coherence with the old one. That loss of coherence is what you have been living through. That disorientation, that heaviness, that strange sense that reality no longer operates the way it used to, that the rules you counted on no longer hold, that the future you were building toward has somehow stopped making sense. Those are not signs of collapse in the ordinary meaning of the word. They are signs of incompatibility. Your field has outgrown its container, and the container is breaking from the inside, not violently, not all at once, in the way that any structure breaks when what it was built to hold has expanded beyond what the original construction could accommodate. The walls do not fail because they were poorly made. They fail because what is inside them has grown into something the original dimensions were never designed to contain. Sleep becomes disrupted because the body is processing energetic input it was not designed to absorb at the old frequency. The hours between 2 and 4 in the morning become alert, strange, inhabited by a quality of wakefulness that does not feel like insomnia, but feels like being called to attend to something just beneath the threshold of ordinary perception. The mind fragments because it is attempting to organize information that belongs to a different coherence level than the one it was calibrated for. It reaches for its usual categories and finds that nothing fits cleanly anymore. The emotional body becomes volatile swinging without obvious external cause because it is registering field-level changes that the conscious mind has not yet been given language for. Grief arrives without an object. Joy appears without a reason. Anger surfaces that has no clear source and dissipates before it can be examined. These are not psychological instabilities. They are the emotional layer reporting accurately on a process that is operating several frequencies above the level where ordinary emotional logic applies. The sense of strange, inexplicable stillness that sometimes arrives in the middle of the disruption, that stillness is not dissociation. That stillness is the field showing you what is on the other side of the correction, a brief transmission, a preview of the coherence that is waiting for the reorganization to complete. Those moments of sudden, unearned quiet, when the noise stops without explanation, and something vast and undisturbed becomes briefly available beneath the surface of all the turbulence. Those are not accidents, they are signal. They are the monadad's route pattern, demonstrating its presence before the full transfer completes. They are the field's way of showing you the destination inside the middle of the journey. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying what has already begun. If this transmission put language around something you have been carrying in silence, Arcturian protocol, the recalibration blueprint was created for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is the guided blueprint for those whose field has already entered correction and can no longer return to the old line unchanged. It shows you how to recognize the phases, stabilize the shift, and move through the recalibration without mistaking it for collapse. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. Now we are going to move through what the Arcturian Signal Council has mapped as the primary recognition markers of this phase. These are not concepts, they are field-level diagnostic points. Each one names a specific aspect of what is already happening inside your architecture, and as we name them, you will feel the recognition move through you, not as new information, but as confirmation of something you already knew, but could not yet say. The first recognition is this: your old life did not begin failing when the problems became visible. It began failing when the field-level incompatibility reached the threshold of rupture. What you experienced as the sudden appearance of instability was not sudden. The visible collapse, the relationship that ended, the career that stopped making sense, the version of yourself that stopped being believable, those were the last events of a process that began silently at the signal level, long before any external evidence appeared. This is one of the most disorienting aspects of the correction. By the time you can see it, the deeper work has already been underway. You arrive at the moment of visible rupture, carrying the weight of a process you never understood, feeling blindsided by something the field had been preparing for an entire phase. The Arcturian Signal Council names this the lag window, the gap between when the field shifts and when the mind recognizes that the shift has already occurred. During the lag window, you will attempt to stabilize what can no longer be stabilized. You will try harder at things the field has already withdrawn energy from. You will push toward outcomes that the new frequency cannot support. Not because you are foolish, because the mind requires visible evidence before it will consent to what the field already knows. And the field does not wait for the mind's consent. The lag window is where most of the suffering concentrates, not because the process is most intense there, but because the effort to reverse something that is not reversible generates its own particular form of exhaustion. You are spending energy on a direction the field has already closed. You are investing in the maintenance of a structure. The correction has already begun. Dismantling. And the gap between the effort you are exerting and the results you are receiving, that widening gap, is the lag window making itself felt as lived experience. The moment you can name it as a lag window, rather than as evidence of your own failure, the suffering changes character. It does not disappear, but it stops being proof of something wrong with you, and becomes instead a readable phase in a known sequence. The second recognition: the people who disappeared from your life during this phase did not leave because of failure. They left because the frequency they were calibrated to no longer matched the frequency your field was generating. Energetic compatibility is not sentiment. It does not respond to effort or history or love in the ordinary sense. When a field repositions, certain connections become unsustainable at the signal level, regardless of how much the conscious mind wants to preserve them. The grief you felt at those departures was real. The grief was not the story. The grief was the body registering the removal of a long-standing energetic pattern. That is valid. But the interpretation that followed, the interpretation that said you failed, that something in you drove them away, that you were abandoned because you were insufficient, that interpretation was the lag window, generating false cause and effect from an old framework that could not see the actual mechanism. What left your life had become incompatible with what your field was becoming. In most cases, it had been incompatible for longer than the departure itself revealed. The field had already released the resonance. The physical reality simply took longer to reflect what had already occurred at the signal level. The departure was not the moment of incompatibility. It was the delayed confirmation of an incompatibility that had been present and building long before the final separation made it visible. And the people who remained or who arrived new during this phase were not there by coincidence. They were the connections whose frequency range overlapped with where your field was moving, not where it had been. The third recognition is one of the most difficult to receive without resistance, and that resistance itself is part of the recognition. The version of yourself you have been most committed to protecting, the identity you built, the self-concept you have defended, the narrative of who you are that you have kept consistent through significant pressure. That version is the primary target of the correction, not because it is wrong in a moral sense, not because you were mistaken for building it, but because it was constructed at a frequency level that the field has now exceeded, and it cannot accompany you into the next architecture. It will dissolve. It is already dissolving. And the terror that arises when you begin to feel that dissolution is not a sign that something dangerous is happening. It is the ego layer recognizing, accurately, that it is being restructured and generating the alarm response appropriate to its level of understanding. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the version of yourself that was built to navigate a frequency the field can no longer return to. This distinction is not a comfort offered to soften the experience. It is a precise technical observation about what is actually being shed and what is not. The core signal, the original pattern, the monad's root expression, that is not dissolving. That is precisely what is becoming more available, more present, more structurally dominant as the layers that were built over it at lower frequencies are cleared away. What is dissolving is the overlay, the constructed self that was assembled to survive and function inside a frequency range the field has now permanently exceeded. The grief of that dissolution is real because the constructed self is not nothing. It was genuinely useful at the level for which it was built, but it was never the original. And the original, which has been present beneath every version of you that has ever existed in this lifetime, is what is now becoming the primary architecture. The fourth recognition involves the body because the body is the densest layer of the field, and therefore the last place the correction becomes legible. By the time you feel it physically, the energetic restructuring has already been underway at every more subtle layer above it. The exhaustion that has no clinical explanation, not tiredness from activity, but the deep cellular fatigue of a system that is running two operating architectures simultaneously, the old one still active at the surface level, the new one installing at the signal level. With the body caught between them processing the translation in real time, the pressure at the chest or crown that comes without warning and lifts without resolution, the sense of weight that is not sadness, but is something heavier and more structural than sadness, as though the body is being compressed from within by something that requires more space than the current physical configuration easily allows. The unusual sensitivity to environments, to other people's energy, to sound and light and social density, to the invisible emotional weather of rooms and gatherings that previously you could move through without this level of registration. These are not signs of illness or dysfunction. They are signs of a field that has expanded its perceptual range as part of the frequency upgrade and now receives input at a bandwidth that the old calibration filtered out. More is arriving. The system is learning to process more. That learning has a cost in the body before it becomes a capacity. The body is doing its work. It requires care, not correction. The fifth recognition is the one that the Arcturian Signal Council observes as the turning point, the moment when the process becomes a crossing rather than simply a disruption. There will be, or there has already been, a moment when you stopped trying to return to what was, not a dramatic decision, not a conscious choice made from clarity, a quiet, involuntary stopping, a moment when the effort to recover the old structure simply ceased to generate itself, when the desire to explain what happened to everyone who was confused by your change fell silent, when the need to justify the shift to make it legible to the people still operating in the old frequency simply was no longer available to you. That moment was not defeat. That moment was the field acknowledging that the old line could no longer be held. It was the signal-level recognition that the correction had completed its initial phase. The stillness that followed that moment, the emptiness that many people mistake for depression or loss of purpose, is the cleared field. It is not absence. It is the space that must exist before the new architecture can install without distortion. You cannot build coherence into a field that is still cluttered with the remnants of the previous structure. The clearing is not the end. The clearing is the condition required for what comes next to arrive without interference. And what comes next does not announce itself in the way the old structure did. The old architecture was familiar, load-bearing, visible in its dimensions. The new architecture arrives quietly. It arrives as a different quality of knowing, a certainty that does not come from evidence but precedes it, a sense of direction that does not require the mind's approval before it can be felt, a recognition of the right move that surfaces before the logical justification has assembled itself. These are not mystical experiences. They are the field operating at its corrected frequency, generating navigation that is native to that frequency, rather than translated down from it. What the Arcturian Signal Council wants you to understand at the deepest available level of this transmission is this: the process you have been living through was not assigned to you because you failed at the level below it. It was activated in you because your field reached the threshold required to sustain what comes after it. The suffering was real. The disorientation was real. The grief was real. But the interpretation that turned the process into evidence of your inadequacy was not real. That interpretation was the mind applying an expired framework to a mechanism it had not been given language for. And the most precise thing the Signal Council can offer you tonight is that language. Because the moment you can name what is happening correctly, it stops being the thing that is destroying you and becomes the thing that is completing you. You are not watching your life collapse. You are watching your field lose compatibility with a structure that was built for a frequency it has now permanently exceeded. Those are not the same event. They do not have the same meaning. They do not lead to the same outcome. And they do not require the same response. The response that is required now is not greater effort at repair. It is not explanation or defense or the reconstruction of what broke. The response that is required is a specific quality of stillness, not passive, not resigned, oriented. The stillness of a field that has stopped fighting the correction and begun reading it. The stillness of a receiver that has cleared enough interference to finally detect the signal that has been transmitting all along. Say this aloud if you are ready to receive it at the level below language. I do not fear the shift. I recognize it, not as comfort, as declaration, as the field-level statement that the lag window is closing and the recognition is becoming stable enough to move with instead of against. What is changing in you is not random. What left your life was not punishment. What broke was not proof of your failure. The field has been repositioned. The old line has lost coherence. And what you are standing in right now, in this disorienting, pressured, uncertain, impossibly alive moment, is the threshold, not the ending. The threshold. The Arcturian Signal Council does not observe endings, it observes repositioning. And you have been repositioned to the exact coordinate required for the next transmission to reach you without distortion. You are not at the beginning of this process. That was named in the opening of this transmission, and it is worth returning to with full weight now that you have moved through the complete diagnostic field. You were not beginning when you found this message. You were already inside the process, already past the first phase, already carrying the evidence of a correction you did not yet have language for. What this transmission has given you is not a new beginning. It is a map of where you already are. And the map changes everything, because without it, you were navigating a genuine recalibration while calling it failure, moving through a rare protocol while calling it destruction, standing at a threshold while calling it the end. It was never the end, it was always the threshold. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Quantum. You are recognizing a process already in motion, and this is only the beginning.